Trump, meanwhile, is completely, veering out of control. People are saying, well, why is he bothering to campaign and do rallies in California, for example? He's going to do one in New York, both of which are almost bound to be in the blue column. In California's case, of course, Kamala Harris comes from California. And the reason appears to be that he wants to whip up as much money as he can before the election, rather than necessarily try and win across vote.
We're going to turn to America now. There was plenty to talk about any given day. Sarah Baxter's on the line, director of the Murray Colvin Centre for International Reporting stateside. Hi, Sarah.
Hello, John.
Welcome as always. Sarah, just in the last half an hour or so, news comes in that Kamala Harris, the Democratic nominee, is going to be doing an interview with Fox News, which has support for Donald Trump and his cause running through it. It's going to be a fascinating spectacle, that, Sarah.
Yes, it is. And I think we know why, because Kate Borsay herself explained that Kamala Harris is feeling under pressure. The polls do seem to be tightening. Some are up, some are down. They're pretty much settling into a very, very close pattern. And she wants to change the dynamic and surprise people, as she did during the debate when she effectively thumped Donald Trump. She's been criticized for preaching to her own choir. In a way, that's not so stupid. She needs to mobilize her own vote. I mean, turnout is going to be critical in this election, but she has to prove that she's got the political chops to take on criticism. And there are no more effective critics of her than there are at Fox News.
But it's going to be a vastly more testing experience for Kamala Harris than was the presidential debate, isn't it? She's going to be facing questioners. It's going to be the anchor at Fox, Brett Baier, leading that. They're going to be able to sort of trip her up to score a point with every moment that passes. She's going to have to be, every bit as briefed and ready as she was for the presidential debate and more.
Yes, more probably, as you point out. Brett Baier is a very good anchor. He's going to be well prepared, and she has to be even better prepared because she can't rely on him saying something ridiculous. Donald Trump did her a huge favor when he started ranting on about they're eating the pets in Springfield, Ohio, and sounded rather unhinged. Brett Baier's not going to do that. He's going to come up with very, very well-researched, honed questions, and she's got to be on her mettle. But to some extent, credit where it's due, Kamala Harris got a lot of criticism straight out of the gate when she replaced Joe Biden for not doing the tough interviews.
Yes.
But I think she has been pacing herself. First of all, shoring up her support in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Having a successful convention, beating Donald Trump in debate, talking to her own audiences through podcasts and friendly media interviews, and now taking on, her opponents. And there's no bigger opponent than Fox News. So in a very fast campaign, she sort of modulated it and is gaining experience as she goes along.
And I guess she'll try and make a point of saying that I'm facing Fox News on the very much the other side, and the opposite corner. What's Donald Trump doing? He's not doing anything like a testing interview with even with more neutral, many people would say, interviewers and news programs. So trying to draw, but it's a gamble. It's a big gamble.
It's a huge gamble, but case in point, Donald Trump did not have the nerve to face CBS 60 Minutes and came up with a plethora of very feeble excuses over that.
Yeah.
And he also declined to have a second debate. So he has actually agreed to one on Fox News, very much on his home terms.
Well, what about our friends here on Pino and Friends thing? Alicia Fitzgerald, Adam Boulton here with us. Alicia.
Well, I was just thinking, and I know you can't compare these things directly, but the most similar comparison we can make is in our election campaign, Keir Starmer appeared regularly, and lots of his team and lots of the Labour Party appeared regularly on channels like GB News, which is traditionally more a right-leaning channel. And did that work? Was that effective? Yes, it was. I mean, there was a poll, I think, that GB News did in April of this year, of 2024, showing that support to the Labour Party had increased by something like 13 or 14% just in a few months of that happening. So it's a well tried and tested strategy. It's making sure you don't just preach to your own crowd. It is trying to.
A bit of a difference is that when it came to GB News, a fair slice of GB News audience were supporting the Labour Party. Not sure you could say that.
No, it's true.
Of the Fox News audience.
That's why it's not a totally fair comparison. But I just mean in the sense of trying purposely to tap into an audience that probably
Yes.
don't traditionally all back you and support you. It's tried and it's tested.
Yeah.
I think Kamala will have a hard time.
Well,
on
and
Fox,
equally,
but
though, the natural audience of Fox are not Democrats. An awful lot more people are going to be watching this just to see what on earth happens, how that plays out. What are you thinking, Adam?
Well, I'm getting a little bit tired of this narrative about the polls closing, Trump's probably going to win and all the rest of it. Because the reality is, across the section of the polls, that there has, since Kamala Harris took over, been a move towards her, which by and large has been sustained. That if you want to talk about swing states, she has certainly now pulling ahead in Pennsylvania, which is the key swing state. In reality, the pollsters are saying that they have corrected for the error that they had previously in terms of underestimating the Trump vote.
Yes.
And if you take the polls at face value, she is narrowly ahead. And most independent analyses, whether it's Nate Silver or 538, The Economist, say that she has the greater probability of winning this election. And it's Democrats and people on the left who are full of questioning their own side. Similarly, on this question of who's done the most interviews and all the rest of it, it is quite clear that she has done many more interviews than Donald Trump, that she's been campaigning in key states and had probably brought some into play that would not have been into play if Joe Biden was still there. So it is looking good. I mean, it's interesting that Michael Moore, for example, okay, he's on the left, but he's by no means always predicting victory for his side. He says it's actually a slam dunk that Kamala Harris is on the way to win. Bill Maher, another commentator, is saying that she is looking pretty good. Now, of course, the last thing that the Democrats want to do is to whip up complacency that she's going to win, because, as Sarah said, it is absolutely about getting the vote out and encouraging people to vote. And again, we have had returns from early voting. They're looking pretty good for the Democrats. They tend to do better in early voting anyway, but they're holding up in that early voting, which would also be a positive sign. So I don't think that Democrats should be so gloomy. Trump, meanwhile, is completely veering out of control. People are saying, well, why is he bothering to campaign and do rallies in California, for example? He's going to do one in New York, both of which are almost bound to be in the blue column. In California's case, of course, Kamala Harris comes from California. And the reason appears to be that he wants to whip up as much money as he can before the election, rather than necessarily try and win across votes. So I think, you can look at what's going on and see a different objective reality, but it is one that the Democratic side are most inclined to doubt and to question.
Yeah, Sarah, just a word from you. We're going to take a break for a moment in a moment, but there is that view there, isn't there? And it's quite strong when you look at what people are saying online and in other parts of the media, that the Democrats get into a bit of a funk, a bit of a panic, but that's because that's what they do. And the polls at the moment, the average is looking better than it was for Donald Trump, but more of the polls now are being carried out by Republican-leaning pollsters. So that does skew the averages Donald Trump's way as well. And add to that, I guess, on top of points that Adam was making, which is that Kamala Harris is raising more money than Donald Trump at the moment by quite a long distance. And the ground game of the Dems looks so much more professional and in better shape than the Republicans.
Yes, and if I actually agree with what Adam is saying. I wrote an article for the Standard last week saying that Kamala Harris is going to win, that Democrats should relax. I did include in brackets, I think.
Did you say they should relax? Did you really say that?
Yes, because they do get into a panic. But objectively, things are pretty good. And it's possible that pollsters are making the mistake, are overcompensating for previous mistakes and underestimating the support that women have for Kamala Harris. And the two groups most likely to vote, that is women and college-educated voters, are overwhelmingly for the Democrats. And the low propensity voters are more likely to be for Trump. So ground game, turnout, all this matters, and it is looking pretty favorable for the Democrats. But we know that Donald Trump is a good closer. I think in 2020, if he'd had an extra few weeks, he might have wrested that election away from Joe Biden. So she has to be very much on her game in these closing 3 weeks in order to make sure she keeps her nose ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Our listener John writes in, the endless pro-Harris bias on this show continues. Thank you for writing in, John. Always keen to hear what you and everyone else has to say about this. I would not accept what you're saying. I would suggest that we are trying to do a bit of objectivity here now. But depending where you're sitting, that may look a little bit like bias to you. But that would be my answer to that.